Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you here, and I will commend and congratulate you, as always, for taking 1 hour out of your very, very busy schedules to make an investment in your single most important asset, and that's yourself. Any investment you make in your own skills and your own well-being will pay dividends for the rest of your life. And I'm really delighted that you made the choice to be here today because I know you're all very busy. All right, so we're going to get going. This is part of a monthly series. If you haven't signed up and registered for the whole series, it happens the fourth Friday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We have some absolutely incredible sponsors for this. Zappa, which is my new company, and it's all about helping everybody get filthy enriched. We also have the Empowered community, and Empowered is a group of CMOs run by Sixth Sense. We have the Eng CTO community, and I see lots of people on from that this morning. We have the Next Work community, which is about board diversity. Trivium, which does back office services for lots of companies. And we have ZRG, which is a global talent company. So thank you very much to the sponsors for this. And we couldn't be here and doing this kind of stuff without your help. What we're going to do both today and for the next 5 months, the next 5 sessions, is to go through the high 5. And these are the 5 competencies that are most associated with both individual and team or company outperformance. And if you can build this solid foundation of competencies, either for yourself personally and or even better for your team, you're going to see high octane performance. And there's tons of research behind this. If you're interested, please reach out to me. I will send you that, or ask ChatGPT, or whatever your favorite resource link is. So these competencies are self-awareness, self-control, self-care. And I know a lot of you on this call have the first 2, but you often skip that third of self-care, and you can't take care of anybody else. You can't be your best self unless you're taking care of yourself. So don't skip that. And then communications and trust. And trust and collaboration go hand in hand, so we pair those together. That's the base of Maslow's hierarchy. We can start to build on top of that foundation once we have that foundation in place. So as you're listening today, and we did the conscious capitalism last time, we're starting with self-awareness, the first of the high 5 this time. You're listening with 2 hats on. Your own self-awareness for yourself personally, but also how do you show up for your team? How do you send those ripples into your team? And how do you get your team modeling and understanding their own self-awareness? And if you can do that, you end up in that high performance category. So to that end, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce a very good friend, a fantastic advisor and part of the Zappa community, Ellie Bassick-Trovato. And she has an incredible personal story as well as a ton of hard experience. She's an award-winning and best-selling author, and she's got a big community called The New Brave. And I invite you to lean in and listen to the wisdom she has to share. Thank you, Ellie, for being here.
Thank you so much, Christine. I am so excited about the opportunity to be here with you guys today, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the Zappa team. When I discovered what you guys were up to and had the beautiful serendipities happen that brought me into your world right when I had just finished writing a book called The Joy Spiral Playbook, which is all about discovering the surprising path to a life filled with joy, I just felt like such a marriage of the minds, and it's just been absolutely thrilling to watch everything unfolding and to get to be part of this speaker series. So I'd love it if you could go to the next slide for me, Christine.
Yep.
Thank you so much. So who am I? I am an empowerment coach. I am the author of the Joy Spiral Playbook. I'm a keynote facilitator and a workshop facilitator. And I founded a company called The New Brave. And to me, The New Brave is all about being the person who chooses love over fear, being the person who chooses expansion over contraction. And there's a noise going on in the background, Christine.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is because I thought the whole point of this is we get everybody muted. But thank you, whoever muted themselves.
Fantastic. So I come to the work that I do from a background of a lot of challenges, honestly. So my husband passed away when my son was just about 2 years old, just under 2 years old. And he passed away of a brain tumor. And that was clearly a really challenging time in my world and in my life. And it was also the time in which I discovered what I'm made of. And it was the time when I discovered that life is not about what happens to you, but who you become in the face of what happens to you. And so the ravages of this brain tumor took place over the period of a year. And during that same time, my father passed away. And I'm also somebody who I went to boarding school and I started suffering from depression way back then. And so for a lot of my teen years and adult life, I was also working through depression. And so I bring this to mind because I think it's really clarifying when you hear the story that I have and what I've learned and who I've become in the face of it, it brings it home and helps you to realize that no matter what is going on in your own life and the challenges that you faced, that it is entirely possible to choose love, to choose expansion, to choose peace, to choose joy. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily an easy path, but it is a path that involves us being able to train our brains. And so when my husband had his brain tumor, what happened is that this was a man who was an assistant superintendent of schools, had been a beloved principal, a beloved math teacher for 30 years. And I watched what happened to him and to his facility with navigating the world as that brain tumor took over. And the brain tumor was in the prefrontal cortex, which for all of us is at the front of our brains. And by the time they discovered it, it was the size of somewhere between a lemon and a grapefruit. And it had crossed over the corpus callosum into the other side of the brain as well. And this developed my fascination with the prefrontal cortex because I saw this man who had been able to navigate the challenges of an entire school building and the scheduling, and had a phenomenal relationship with the kids, the adults, the union, the teachers, the bus drivers, the parents. Everybody loved John Trovato. He was a phenomenal man who could manage so many different things. And he became a man who forgot to sign his checks when he would write his checks. And he became a man who, you'll hear some stories throughout this, where his ability to overcome his impulses was diminished. And so I started making that correlation of, as he was losing the access to the prefrontal cortex, seeing what happened, and then starting to understand this is actually what happens to us, not in such an extreme degree, but it is something that happens to us when we get into something that I call the red zone. So we're going to talk about that as we go on, but this is a little bit about who I am and why I became a coach. Is in the face of those challenges, who I became, and all of the personal growth and development work I've done. I have a master's in education. I've been a Tony Robbins Platinum partner. I've been in this personal growth and development world, and then had the chance to take everything that I've learned and run it through the mill of my own life experience and come up with my own tools and strategies, and now guide other people in excavating the inner peace that's available to them, and that joy and that sense of empowerment. So yeah, let's go on to the next slide, Christine.
Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. So what we're going to talk about today is how to bring out the best, your best, and your team's best through the power of self-awareness. And this is such a huge tool. And I know everybody who is on here has some degree of self-awareness, and probably a more advanced degree than many people in the world. But this is one of those things that there's always room to grow. And what I'm going to bring to the table today is some immediately usable tools and strategies that will make an impact and an immediate difference when you use them, and will help you and your team to be more effective and more powerful. So let's go on to the next slide. All right. What scuba diving and Aruba taught me, and that is my attempt to draw waves down there. So many years ago, I had the opportunity to be...
Oh, sorry about that.
I had the opportunity to be in Aruba, and I was actually getting certified in scuba diving. And what I discovered was there was a part of scuba diving that I loved, and there was a part of scuba diving that I did not love at all. And I want you to imagine for a second, if you want to close your eyes and imagine that you have all this gear on and you are in the boat with a bunch of other people who are about to go scuba diving. And then they say, okay, and then they anchor the boat and then you jump into the water. And I want you to imagine waves everywhere, white caps coming at you, coming into the snorkel gear, coming like everywhere. You're being pushed away from the boat. You're being pushed away from other people. You're being pushed into people. I want you to imagine for a second what that feels like. In your body, where do you feel that? It's a high stress moment. And then I want you to imagine going underneath the water, underneath the waves, to that calm and beautiful stillness that's underneath. That stillness is when you are so captivated by the fish that you see, the anemones that you see, that like it is just, you're just so enwrapped in the moment, you're in the flow. And it's a very big difference between being up there and being down there. So what my boyfriend at the time and I decided was that when we jumped into the water, if it was a particularly crashy kind of wave time, then I would go under the water right near him so he could tap me if I needed to come back up, because sometimes the scuba diving instructor is giving last minute instructions. And so I'd be at the top, the scuba diving instructor is screaming at me to be the board as I'm panicking. And then instead I realized, okay, I can go underneath. I don't know what the heck he's talking about. It's not making any sense to me. And this is what happens when our prefrontal cortex is offline. Information's coming at us and we cannot make sense of it. And so imagine prefrontal cortex completely stressed offline when you're up top, and then underneath the waves, when you're in the stillness, when you have that peace that is available to each and every one of us, imagine that that's when your prefrontal cortex is online. So that's the setup for understanding what we're up to today. We're going to be talking about that disempowered version of us that's in the chaos and the drama and the worry. And then we're going to be talking about that empowered version of us that's underneath the waves, that's in the peace and fully immersed in an experience. So you can go to the next slide, please. So what we're going to be bringing in here is brain science. So there is an empowered version of each and every one of us, bar none. We all have an empowered version, and we all have a disempowered version of us, bar none. The empowered version of us has the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive functioning center of our brains. It is lit up and we can do amazing things. The disempowered version of us has the lizard brain active, that part of our brain that is just like a lizard. There's the fight, flight, or freeze response. No clear thinking going on. Let's go to the next slide. So to step back for a second and engage your own brain, because being at something like this is one thing. It's amazing to show up. The next level of impact is when you really engage with what we're talking about and you take the opportunity to reflect. Then your brain is like, okay, this really matters. Let me pay attention. So the question that I have for you that I'd love for you to put in the chat is, what are the qualities that matter to you and your company? What are the qualities you want to see in your people and in your culture? Is it people who are stressed out, anxious, frustrated, upset, feeling on edge, defensive? Or is it people who are feeling flexible and creative? And so tell me 3 to 5
Put it in the
qualities.
chat. I'm also realizing, Ellie, and I don't know why this is, but there's over twice as many people on the webinar as actually showing up in the chat when I look at the list. So I don't know if their systems don't let them chat or if we've done something, but if you can access your chat and you can share what you want out of your people and your culture, please do that. Oh, shoot, sorry, go back. None of us want stressed out, inflexible, dogmatic, defensive people. That's for darn sure. It's very hard to make good decisions and drive change when people have emotional reactions. I have to say, in my last week and a half, I've dealt with some very extreme situations, some, like hard stuff we have to figure out. And in one case, super emotionally mature response. And in another case, quite less so. And just then the stress back on me trying to drive good decisions is quite different. So, it really, like you will say all the time, it has a lot of ripple effects.
It really does. That's a great example too. I think we see it in our lives all the time, but we're not always noticing it. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about today, is the power to notice. And as we talk about this today, it's just going to be bringing this all front of mind for you. So you're going to be able to start noticing these things more and more in your own life and in your team's world. And that will help you to further empower them and help them to be in that empowered place. So we've got ethics and inclusivity, empowered, energized, focused, safe, being authentic, curiosity, tenacity, engagement, passion, a strong sense of ownership, and curious. Yes, hard to find time to realize when to pause when it gets very stressed and emotional. I definitely get that. That point where you need to take the breath to get out of the emotional spiral. Engage.
Even just remembering to breathe, like everybody right now, take that deep belly breath, because it makes a difference. We get into the shallow breathing and doesn't engage the right parts of the body or brain.
Yeah. And when you take the breath, the intention should be to fill your belly. Normally we're walking around sucking in our bellies, but really fill it and just and notice the shift. Notice the shift in your own internal chemistry. These are beautiful responses. Yeah, so having the awareness that, okay, if these are the qualities that we want to have in ourselves and in our team and in our company, are we bringing these qualities to the table? Because if we want to have an outcome that has an ingredient of people feeling engaged, then what we have to contribute to that is engagement and helping them feel safe being engaged. And if we want people to be supportive of each other, we want to check in with ourselves, and are we creating that? Are we bringing that into the table, into the group? Or is it kind of sort of sometimes if we're not stressed out about something else? So these are all things really powerful to be aware of. Let's go to the next slide, Christine. So I have something called the ladder of well-being. And we've got a ladder. Imagine that there's 21 rungs to that ladder. And at the very top of it, we call that plus 10. And at the very bottom of it is negative 10. And in the middle is 0. At every moment in time, we are somewhere on this ladder of well-being. We are either in what I call the red zone, where our focus is on surviving. This is the disempowered version of us. The further we go down into that emotional spiral, the further we go down, the more disempowered we are, the more hijacked our brain is. When we're down in that red zone, that's the zone of perceived threat and contraction as opposed to expansion and trust. We have that fight, flight, or freeze response, which is not going to bring out the best in anybody. We have an instinct to play small and stay safe. And if what we want is creative thinkers, that's the opposite of staying small to stay safe. So our prefrontal cortex is essentially unplugged. This is what I saw happen to my husband as his brain tumor affected him over that time. So your brain will help you survive physically, but it's not getting the blood flow to it to help you to get along with each other in a meaningful way, to set and meet goals, to create great relationships, to think creatively or flexibly, or to have insights, or to be able to problem solve. And so the opposite of that is the green zone. And that's when our focus is on thriving. And this is when we have the empowered version of us and the empowered version of the people around us. Our prefrontal cortex is activated. And we can think creatively and flexibly. We can solve problems. We can understand different points of view. We can make really effective decisions. We can inhibit impulses. We can memorize new information. We can set goals. We can build incredible working relationships and partnerships, and recognize and act on opportunities, and build others up instead of tearing them down. Sometimes we're tearing them down without realizing that that's what we're doing. So the ladder of well-being is a really phenomenal way to look at and become aware of you and your team. This is where self-awareness comes in. So right now, if you were to tune in and imagine, okay, you at your very most hijacked, when you can't think clearly whatsoever, let's say that that's -10. And then let's imagine you at your very, very best, then you are at +10. And right now, you are riding somewhere on the ladder of well-being. Now we have a baseline, which is sort of our, generally speaking, where we ride on that ladder of well-being. And I will say that when I was in boarding school and going through the worst of my times, I was riding at a -8. That was my baseline. I could go up, I could go down, but kind of where I was buoyant to was that -8. With the work that I've done over the years, with my personal growth and development, with the tools that I use and everything else, I ride at more like a +8. I go up from there, I go down from there, but I'm pretty buoyant, I can't even say the word buoyant, and I get myself back to at least that 8. That's my typical. So where do you guys feel like you live, generally speaking, if you're comfortable saying that? This is a safe space. And where do you feel like you are in this moment? I'd love to know if you feel comfortable sharing. So for me, I ride at about an 8, and I would say right now I'm at a 10, because I love getting to have this conversation and to be able to be here with you. Let's see, stressful days. Yeah, red zone, yeah. I feel like I live at a 0, most times in the green zone. 5. I try my level best on 8, but there are days when it goes negative. Absolutely. And that's one of the times we want to have such compassion for ourselves. So anything that I coach and teach on is never for the sake of beating ourselves up and saying we have to be positive all the time. That is not the game of life. The game of life is to live as high on the ladder of well-being as possible, and to be able to get ourselves back up when we fall down. And we don't get ourselves back up by beating ourselves up for falling down. So we can train our brains, upgrade our operating system so that we live higher and we recover faster. So as you have this awareness, let it just be an awareness. This is what's true for me at this point in my life. Look at all these beautiful people responding.
We have some, very people that live up here, which is not surprising, because to become a leader, you generally are up here. Now, with that said, there's a lot of research that shows 15 to 20% of people in leadership positions, corporate and political, can fall into the sociopathic personality type. And so we don't want to reinforce that. You're sending out pretty narcissistic ripples, but I know most people on this call, I would say we have some generally very high functioning people who are sending out positive ripples.
Yeah. Yes.
But we can all get sucked down, like you said, when it's a hard week or a hard couple of months, we're trying to get a product out. I know many of you do the same, like it gets frustrating.
Yes. And there are so many influences on where we're going to be. Even if our body's tired, that's like a red zone pressure. It's not that we can't be green zone, but it's just a little bit harder. If we're going through something at home, it's going to affect where we ride. And so there are things that sort of press us down, and there are things that lift us up. And we're going to be talking more about that. And I see people asking the question about staying, getting out of the red zone. And we're going to be talking about that. And Denise, I really want to applaud you for plate full, -6, any other day, +7. You're here, you're present, you're fully focused. And that is a really hard thing to do when you are riding at a negative number. So kudos.
And Denise is a part of the Zappa team. She's an intern. This girl is so freaking amazing. She does juggle a lot. She's young, incredibly mature, and starting at Berkeley this coming fall. So super proud of her. Yeah.
Wow.
But I loved your point, Ellie, about the self-care, because for 30 years, I've abused myself, like push, right? Can do that extra, take that extra meeting, blah, blah, blah. But over time, it sucks your energy stores down, and then it makes it harder to rebound fast.
100%.
So take care of yourself.
Yes. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so when we look at, there's 4 kind of different things that we want to pay attention to here. One is, okay, there's looking at the empowered version of you and what qualities you have available to yourself, and the empowered version of the people you work with and what qualities they have available at their best. So I'd love this is an opportunity to really tune into, okay, when I am at my best, what are some of like the juiciest qualities that I bring to the table? Because we all have our own unique nutrient that we bring to the table. And it's important to recognize that. It's easy to get caught up in the things that we're not doing right yet, or the things that are, not our favorite qualities. But I'd love for you guys to take an opportunity to really focus in on what are the special qualities that you bring to the table when you are in the green zone. So for me, and Christine, I'd love to know what you think are some of your best qualities. For me, I have deep compassion, and I have a wisdom that flows through me that I'm really happy about. And I love my generosity. Those are 3 of my favorite qualities.
That's great. I love helping and impacting in a positive way other people and companies, and sending out those positive ripples and seeing how they impact the rest of the world. That gives me more joy than anything.
Yes. Those feelings of contribution.
Yep.
Oh, I love that. And we've got optimism, enthusiastic, encouraging, support.
Oh, I love the humor one. I wish that's my big downfall, is I take everything too seriously, myself included. And it's like, my husband makes me laugh all the time because he's always laughing at me, usually. But he laughs at himself. He laughs at everything. And I love people that bring humor. It's a really lovely gift.
I completely agree.
Playfulness, Chanda says. Yeah. Dimitri, you definitely have humor. And Dimitri used to be a CTO at one of the companies that he and I worked together. And when things get really tough on that engineering side, and you can bring that just lightheartedness in, it's a gift for everybody.
Yes, it really is. These are all beautiful qualities. Yeah, the humor is so important. Let's go back, Christine. Yep. So tuning into recognizing your own empowered version, and it's worth taking time, and we won't do it right now because we've got a lot more to get through, but taking some time to reflect on, okay, what are those qualities that I can bring to the table at my best? Christine, back up.
Sorry.
So when I'm at my best, what do I bring to the table? And when you really recognize that, I think it galvanizes us to be able to take better care of ourselves. Because if we're like, well, if I want to live in the green zone more often and bring those qualities to the world, then my self-care is an important aspect of that. So it's a way to create that why, that bigger why, why does it matter to come to an event like this? Why does it matter to be engaged with Zappa and everything Zappa has going on? Why does it matter to work with a coach? It's like an insurance policy that you get to live as the more empowered version of you. And then there's the empowered version of the people that you work with, and we'll be talking more about that as we go. And then there's the disempowered version of both of you. So the tools that I want to mention on this page are, first of all, noticing. Notice, I call it the notice dance, and I got this from one of my mentors, and I absolutely love it. Our brain loves the dopamine hit of feeling excitement about something. And when we take the time to step back into the observer role and notice, all right, I am deep in the red zone right now. The very first thing to do is to do, and some of you might feel too silly to do this, but at least do it in your head, like a notice dance, like I notice, because we can't change anything until we notice it. In other words, we can't change anything until we become aware of it, until we become conscious of it. So the I notice dance is literally just, it is a win and helps you get back toward the green zone when you purely notice. You neutralize yourself when you notice where you're at. Now, if you're high up on the ladder of well-being and you notice, then you just get higher. But if you're in the red zone, it can help to move you up a couple of rungs.
Well, and pay attention to your body. Like Dr. Neha Sang once says, as executives, we get trained to ignore every possible signal in our body. So really reward yourself when you notice and pay attention to the signals, the tightness, the stomach, the throat, the whatever, the headache. When your body sends those signals, notice them.
Yes.
And Ellie, I just want to do a time check with you. It's we got about 15 minutes left, 20 minutes.
So one of the things that you can do, thanks for that, is to actually take a couple of days and do a zone tracker. This will help you to develop that self-awareness. And it's just checking in every hour on the hour, set your timer or whenever you can, and just write down in your notes file, where am I on the ladder of well-being? And you could write, like, what are some of the influences right now? It's just that awareness, developing that awareness. All right, let's go to the next slide. So the good news is that you can upgrade the operating system of your brain. You can optimize how you move through the world. And you can also affect which version of each member of your team you'll be working with. Because if you are red, you are likely to call forth the red in other people. And if you are green, you are likely to call forth the green version of other people. So disempowered people, empower people, empower people. Let's go to the next slide. So here's a tool to know about, and this is it to help your awareness. The reticular activating system is a really important part of your brain. It's a gatekeeper. We have 4 billion bits of information per second that we are taking in, but only 2,000 of them actually make it to our conscious mind. And what happens is it's like a Google search engine. It's like we're going out, and if we're in the red zone, I have these red zone glasses to help illustrate this. If we're in the red zone, we're telling this little gatekeeper in our mind to go out and find the things that are not good right now. Find the things that are frustrating, upsetting, what's going wrong, what's going bad. That is when we have red zone glasses on. When we're in the red zone, our reticular activating system is taking the 4 billion bits of information that are available to us and honing in on the upset and the hard things and the bad things that aren't going well. It's incredibly important to recognize when we're down there, you guys I'm sure have experienced this, everything looks worse. You convince yourself that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Then we've got the green zone glasses. So when we're in the green zone, we actually are scanning for treasures. Red zone, we're scanning for the threats, the wrong, the bad. Green zone, we're scanning for the treasures. What's going well? What are we grateful for? What can we appreciate? There are so many things that we see differently in the world. There's a kaleidoscope of things you can pay attention to in this very second. And whether you're in the red zone or the green zone is going to determine what you're paying attention to. Let's go to the next slide. So self-awareness, red zone. What are some of your red zone triggers? when you take the time to reflect on this, and if a couple come to mind, throw them in the chat right now. This is another great reflection to have at some point in your day. What are my red zone triggers? And what are my team's red zone triggers? It's going to be different. What upsets me is going to be different than what upsets Christine. What upsets each one of your team members is going to be different. We've got a tool that we can play with that's called mountains and molehills. And what we can do is recognize, what are we giving our time and attention to? And a lot of times what we'll do, because our brain has a bias to negativity, is we will take something that is negative, quote unquote, and we make it bigger. We give it more of our attention. When we play with the idea of mountains and molehills, we shrink the things that really don't deserve as much of our attention. And then we grow the things that help us to feel better. So mountains and molehills, that tool is that you take something that's going on in your world and in your life, something that's going on in business that's frustrating to you, and give yourself 3 minutes to tell the story and all the gory details on how frustrating it is. And then check in with where you're at on the ladder of well-being before you do that, and then after. And then do the opposite. Tell the story in less than a minute of what's going on, and check in with your emotions and where you are on the ladder of well-being before and after. And what you'll notice is how much power you have over your emotional state and over your thought process when you shrink and grow things in your life in this way. This is in our power. The only person who can be in charge of how we're going to feel is us. And it's based on what we're going to spend time thinking about and focusing on. And the opposite is true. So that's what we would do with something that's a red zone trigger for us. But if we've got something like a moment, a memory, something that's going really well, then do the opposite. Tell it in a short little amount of time and have it be a molehill, but then expand it and tell it in 3 minutes of like the memory that you have or the amazing celebration that you're going through, and play with this ability of your brain to feel differently based on what you're thinking about. These are all great examples. All right, let's go to the next slide. So it's equally important to be aware of the green zone. What inspires you? Is it humor? Humor is a fantastic green zone activator. Is it beauty? Are you taking time for beauty? Is it some podcast that you listen to? Is it that you have spiritual time every day where you focus in on whatever you believe spiritually? Is it that you meditate? What are the things that inspire you and help you to be, you personally, to be in the green zone? And then paying attention, do you pay attention to and prioritize the things that make you feel good? The thoughts that make you feel good, do you grow those? Do you expand those? Let's go to the next slide. All right, the red zone invitation is a very
I love this. This is such a great, it's so true. Pay attention on this one, everybody.
So I want you to imagine Esty, thanks for that. Yeah, spending time in nature is always good for me to get to the green zone. That is a beautiful one. Yeah. So I want you to imagine for a moment that go back in time to the last time that something happened that stressed you out. Maybe there was a person involved, situation, whatever it was. Just imagine something that stressed you out in the recent past. And then with your eyes closed, imagine that situation of that person just handed you an invitation to the red zone, just like a wedding invitation. You get a wedding invitation in the mail. You open it up and you think, do I want to go to this wedding or not? And then you RSVP yes, or you RSVP no, thank you. What happens when somebody issues us a red zone invitation is that if we're not aware of the fact that that was a red zone invitation, we accept it and we're off to the races. And then what we're doing is exchanging our peace and our power and our ability to think clearly for whatever this invitation was. So that invitation, the last invitation that you got, I want you to imagine that you somebody tried to hand you the invitation and you took it and you opened it and you said, yes, please. And you went straight down into the red zone. And then how did that feel? And what was the outcome of that? And then replay it in your mind differently. See the person or the situation handing you a red zone invitation. See you opening it up, seeing that it was an invitation, and deciding, no, that is not worth exchanging my peace and my sense of empowerment for. No, thank you. Check off the no, thank you, and hand it back. I know that sounds really simplistic, but this is so huge and so powerful, because if you have 100 red zone invitations in a day, you can develop your ability to say no thank you to 99 of them pretty easily. There might still be ones that are going to be the bigger triggers for you, but knowing that the goal is to stay as high as possible on the ladder of well-being, recognize the cost of the yes to the red zone invitation.
And for all of you leaders, this does not mean that when something isn't going right in your life, on your team, whatever, that you're happy with it. It doesn't mean that you accept low performance from other people. It's about your own internal triggers and being able to say, okay, I'm really unhappy with this outcome, this answer, this situation. I'm not going to let my own emotions get in the way of creating the right outcome. I can verbalize, I'm unhappy, and here's how we're going to move forward and solve it.
I love that, Christine. Thank you for bringing that up too. That is such an important aspect of it. This is about you staying in your power. This isn't about, I'm going to be happy-go-lucky in the face of this thing that just came at me. This is more, I want to be able to think clearly. And the energy of the problem is not the energy of the solution. So the energy of the problem is the red zone, and the energy of the solution is the green zone with your prefrontal cortex online. So all you're saying is, I'm not going to give that the power to take me out of my seat of power. I'm going to stay as best I can up here so that I can handle it from the energy of the solution. Yeah, Catherine, that's a right. Really good
Kathy's
point.
Making a good point. It's like we all have people in our lives, in our teams, whatever, and they tend to send more of these invitations, and you got to be aware of those patterns.
Yes.
And, this is what part of all of this is about. Let's help them too. It's not helping them either. So everybody has to, have the opportunity to recognize these patterns in themselves and then make different choices.
Absolutely.
We have to help them.
Absolutely. So green zone activators, it is so important as it is to recognize your red zone triggers and your red zone invitations. We want to know, how do we activate the green zone? If we stay stuck in the red zone, arguing with what is, we're still in the red zone. We're giving it the power. But if we take the time to step back, and there are so many ways to activate our green zone, but these are just some that I'm bringing to the table today. One is to inspire yourself. If it's something that you could listen to, a song that you could listen to that moves you, that moves your body, you can inspire yourself. You can do some deep breathing. That's one of the very first, most important things that you can do, is literally you're taking the power that is gone to your lizard brain and putting it back into your prefrontal cortex, because you're telling your body thinks, when you're in a fight, flight, or freeze response, a red zone response, it thinks you're running from a tiger. It doesn't know the difference between that and running from a tiger. So when you stop and you do some deep breathing, you're basically signaling your brain, like, there's no tiger. I don't have to run, because our breath gets kind of shallow when we get tense. So when you do the deep breathing, it's such an important signal to your body that it can keep power in your prefrontal cortex. So I like to think of breathing as 5, in for 5, hold for 5, out for 5, and do it 5 times. But honestly, it doesn't matter how you do it. It matters that you're intentional about doing it. Another green zone activator is to exercise compassion and think about how this particular situation came about. Think about, compassion for yourself, if it's something that you did that you're not happy about, compassion for another. Everybody makes sense given their model of the world. Everybody's actions make sense given their model of the world. And so compassion is a really important activator, and appreciation of life, appreciation of what somebody just did, appreciation of a moment, a milestone that you passed, appreciation, gratitude, thankfulness. These all can bring you to the to the green zone, quite easily in many cases.
Ellie, two things. One, we're at 10 till, so we need to wrap up within the next couple of minutes. And two,
Okay.
SD has a great comment question, which is that many people try to get themselves in the green room through numbing or self-medicating or other kind of harmful practices, which is really just a cover up and makes the red worse. So if you want to say anything about that.
Yes, that is vital. That's a really important part of the self-awareness, because numbing is you're just staying unaware. You're still letting the situation rule you. It's just another, that's the fight, flight, or freeze. That's the freeze. I'm just going to numb myself. So having the awareness of, oh, when I'm picking up this food or this drink or this whatever it is that I'm engaging in, having an awareness that is accepting the red zone invitation. That's a great point. Let's continue on. So a really powerful green zone activator is the question, what's the gift in this? And I actually had a fantastic story to tell about this that would really bring it home, but I know that we're running out of time. So just know that there's always a gift or a lesson in literally everything that happens, everything. And the moment that you ask the question is the moment that you engage your prefrontal cortex in coming up with the answer. And it may be that it takes a mountain of faith to believe that there is a gift in something or a lesson, but it is always true. And I tell you this from the perspective of somebody whose husband passed away of a brain tumor. Throughout that entire experience, I kept asking, what's the gift in this? Each thing that happened when he had his first grand mal seizure, what's the gift in this? And it was hard, but it changed my brain forever.
Silver linings, as Vijaya just said. It's so true.
Yes.
There is a lesson in everything, and everybody's a teacher.
So we're going to skip the story time, because that was going to be the story about my husband. So one of the things to be aware of is our ripple effects, and Christina's referenced that earlier, and we have ripple effects with our energy all the time. We cannot turn them off. We are sending out a chain reaction of red zone or a green zone ripple effect. And so just having that level of massive self-responsibility to do the work to train our brains in whatever ways that we can, and to do the self-care and all of these other tools. And then looking at what are the key elements for a prefrontal cortex to be engaged and for a person to be empowered. These are the people on your team. Think about this. They need to feel safe, seen, valued, respected, and connected. And so a beautiful reflection question to ask is, what am I doing to make sure that they feel safe? What am I doing to make sure that they feel seen, that they feel valued? If somebody feels like they always have to be in a prove it energy, that's not safety. That's not going to bring out that expansive genius zone that's available in them. Let's go on to the next slide. So really powerful tool is to notice, as we talked about, and then reflect. Become the observer of your life. Who am I being now versus who do I want to be? And Zappa asks these really beautiful reflection questions. What's working? What's not? What's missing or needs to change? What's working? What's not? What's missing or needs to change? At no point is the idea to beat yourself up or to beat up anybody else about this. It's just to have an awareness, because then you just continually evolve and grow over time, evolve in your ability to work together, evolve in your ability to handle the challenges that come your way. And yeah, Christine says, this is for your teams, but also your family, especially if you have teenage kids. Be compassionate and supportive. It's hard to be a kid, 100%. My son the other day when we had a conversation said, Mom, he's turning 20 tomorrow. He said, Mom, I just want to tell you, I'm an adult, but I'm a baby adult. I've never been an adult before. I don't know how to do all these adult things. Having that awareness is so huge. Yeah. And so just having that evolution and growth mindset, then when you have that mindset about yourself, then as the struggles come, they are opportunities to evolve and grow to the next level of the version of you that you can bring to the table. And next slide. So these are the takeaways for today. The reflection questions: reflect on what triggers you into the red zone, what helps you be in the green zone. Reflecting on what's your baseline on the ladder of well-being, what could you do to raise it up? And where and how might you be issuing red zone invitations without realizing it? How can you help others and yourself feel safe, seen, valued, connected, and respected? And the tools that we've talked about are the zone tracker, the notice dance, the ladder of well-being, those glasses, the red zone and green zone glasses, red zone invitations, green zone activators, and the power question, what's the gift in this? Because I wanted to make sure you guys had a lot of takeaways for today. Next slide. Only you control you. And Zappa teaches this and so much more. These are the ways that I can help you to get into a place of more power and your team to get in a place of more power. I do one-on-one coaching. I can tailor group programs to your team. I do keynotes and speaking. I have programs like a program about cultivating an inner peace that lasts a lifetime. That kicks off actually on Sunday. And then you could read my book, The Joy Spiral Playbook, Discover the Surprising Path to a Life Filled with Joy. And connect with me. You can email me, ellie@thenewbrave.com is the best way to connect and to find out more about what I've got going on in my world. And we can jump on a call and talk about what would be a really good fit for you.
Awesome. Ellie, you're so amazing. Thank you very much. Fantastic session. The green and the red glasses definitely stick with. For all of you that stuck with us, which was everybody, we hardly lost anybody. Thank you. The next session is on self-control with Rusty Lavashon. He's absolutely amazing. So if you haven't signed up for the ongoing, do that. Share it with your teams. This is an easy way for you to start enriching your teams and bringing them up. It doesn't cost you anything. It only costs them an hour. And if you want a full day of this, sign up for the session on September 6th. That's on Google's campus. And you will have Raj, you will have Dr. Neha, you will have all kinds of amazing experiences for the high five. Thank you everybody for joining. Great to see you this morning. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellie. You did a fabulous job. I loved it.
Thank you.